Hey everyone, it's John, and we are here talking today. We're at C2 Tactical at the 338 Club, and I am here with Terry Johnson from Firearms Legal Protection and also Cindy Castillo from Castillo Law here in Phoenix. And I have an interesting topic today. So, if God forbid you ever have to get in a defensive encounter, and of course we know that we wouldn't do that unless we absolutely had to, you're going to need to lawyer up. I don't care who you are. And so I've asked Terry and Cindy to talk with us today about how to pick a good one. So let's talk about it. Today's video is brought to us by the generosity of Firearms Legal Protection. Firearms Legal Protection is a legal defense program for lawful gun owners. You win the fight, and they will help you win the fight after the fight for the rest of your life. There's a link in the description for a coupon code for a discount for all active self-protection watchers. So, Cindy, this is your first time on Extra, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and you practice criminal law here in the Valley?
That's right. So I solely practice criminal defense law. I'm a certified criminal specialist. That basically means that I had to take another test above and beyond what normal criminal defense attorneys have to do. We also have to meet minimum criteria. I have been practicing in the criminal defense field for pretty much the entire time of those 15 years. And love my practice, love my clients most of the time.
Most of the time. So how much of so you're a criminal defense specialist, how much of your criminal defense would you say is in the self-defense world?
I would say mainly it's gun crimes. The way I categorize it would be gun crimes. And I would say probably a good 30% of my cases come from gun crimes.
So for the last 15 years as a criminal defense attorney, about somewhere in that 30% world of your stuff has dealt with firearms related stuff.
Correct.
Okay, so we would call that an expert, friends. We'd call that a specialist. And Terry, you as well, how much of your practice would you say is self-defense related?
I would say right along the same lines that Cindy, 35%. One of the things that was growing before I stopped practicing.
Yeah.
And that's a great number because again, when there's a gun involved, someone is trying to defend themselves generally.
Mm. So, okay, I'm not an attorney. I'm just your average defender, right? You know, okay, so you have a YouTube guy and all that stuff, and I probably train a lot more than most. But let's just say now I had to get in a self-defense encounter, right? So I had to shoot somebody, and it's totally justified shooting. I'm not worried about whether I did the right thing or not. But I know I gotta talk to the attorneys now at this point. How would, as an attorney, how would you tell somebody to pick a good one? Cindy, what would you say? What makes for a good defense attorney?
I think the first thing that you have to think about is experience. If the attorney has never handled a gun crime case, first off, that is probably somebody you want to stay away from.
I mean, and of course, everybody has to get on the bicycle at some point, but you would certainly hope, well, hey, I was the assistant in these 50 cases or whatever, so I've worked with others on these a lot. If they're a rookie, they just hung their shingle up, stay away.
That's right, and that goes really to my second point, and that is because if you don't have experience in these cases, you don't have experience going to a jury trial, that person might be a little bit more reckless with your life. And with gun cases, you can't be reckless because you're talking about prison time.
Yeah, I mean, anything firearms related seems like in every state in the union, man, you're talking decades. And so, do you really, I mean, I never really thought of the fact that I could have an attorney that just because they're not experienced enough, that they take risks with my future.
I don't know that it's a risk. They just don't know. You know, there's a lot of times you have attorneys that don't understand what it's like to deal with a gun case. It might be fine for somebody who deals with a misdemeanor, you know, something like a reckless discharge. But when you actually have to use self-defense, it's something completely different. And a lot of attorneys who don't understand that or don't understand how firearms laws actually work in conjunction with everything else, that's what I think Cindy's talking about. You become reckless at that point.
So I guess, again, I'm not thinking as a lawyer here because I ain't one. It would seem to me that, okay, so I could have somebody who is a criminal defense attorney who maybe even defends a lot of people who are accused of gun crimes, or defends a lot of guilty people. I mean, that just happens, right? Somebody's got to defend those people too. Do you think it's important to choose an attorney who has defended people who did the good thing and still got prosecuted for it? Is that even a possible thing to find?
Absolutely. There's plenty of times where perhaps they were doing what they believed was the right thing, and we may even believe it was the right thing. Unfortunately, the law just doesn't provide a defense for them. But that is, again, I think the reason why you have to choose a defense attorney that has experience and can differentiate those potentially minute issues in the law, such as, intentional discharge versus unintentional discharge, accidental discharges.
Okay, so I'm gonna go kind of even a little deeper, because I'm sure somebody's thinking, okay, wait a minute, I only want to hire somebody who wins all the time. And I get that, right? You want somebody who knows how to successfully navigate through to a victory. But it seems to me that maybe, wait a minute, you might be taking people that you go, look, man, we'll make it every effort we can, and I'll take that, but understand we're probably not going to make it there, and you should take a plea bargain or whatever. So do you take win percentage into account?
Well, here's the interesting thing. What's a win? Okay, and let's put that in perspective. Sometimes a win is getting somebody what us attorneys call an out date. What does that mean? That means instead of going away for life, I get you 15 years. That could be a win, depending upon the severity of what you're charged with. In some cases, a win can be, hey, listen, you get a misdemeanor, you never be able to carry a firearm again. That might be a win because you're out of prison.
Right.
So when you say a win, we have to really put that in perspective, and you really never know how to categorize that until you get into the trenches of the battle.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen and I've talked with others who, I know a guy right now, in fact, who his attorney got him a great plea bargain, and he said, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to go to court. And I go, oh, yeah, what are you, stupid? Man, your life's at stake here. But at the end of the day, it's your decision whether you're going to accept that or not the attorney's decision, right? What other criteria would you encourage people to look at when they're trying to think about hiring a defense attorney?
My belief is if they have the experience and they're not going to be reckless with your life, you also have to look at whether or not you're a good fit for them, and if they're a good fit for you.
Tell me what that means.
Sure. There are some individuals who it doesn't matter how great the attorney is, how much experience the attorney has. If the individual does not believe in that attorney, is not confident with that attorney's skills, or if simply they just have differing principles with respect to gun rights, that might not be a good fit. So my advice would be that you got to interview your attorneys, at least 3 or 4 attorneys, and make sure that you have the same principles in terms of what you expect to get out of this.
So, so I'm kind of one of those guys where, like, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, right? I believe the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And so if I go in and I go, hey, tell me about your stance on the Second Amendment, and they go, well, I don't think anybody should have guns, but the law's the law, and it says you can, even though I don't like that.
Right.
That's probably one that I'm like, I don't think our ethic is the same here. We're probably not going to work so hot. Yeah?
I think so. I wouldn't say that attorney would not be able to represent that person. It just might be the case that later on down the line, when there's an issue of, well, should I go to trial or should I not go to trial, your client may not have as much confidence in that person as they would somebody who their principles are more in line.
Right.
And John, here's the thing, you gotta remember one thing. Cindy mentioned interviewing 3 or 4 attorneys.
Yep.
Sometimes it's kind of hard to do if you're behind bars.
So there's a big one. I was going there next. Is that this sounds like something I need to do ahead of time.
You should, unless you're a member of Firearms Legal Protection. Again, Cindy's one of our attorneys in the network. We kind of take the stance of interviewing the attorneys beforehand.
Okay.
I sit down with the attorneys, me and my staff, and we talk to them and we get their background and we say, hey, yep, people like Cindy and other folks are fine, and you pick up the phone, we know what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
we know what you're getting, and they should know as well.
So even if someone is a Firearms Legal Protection member, do you think that it's wise for them to say, hey, who's in my area? And, I mean, gosh, if I'm traveling or whatever, I'm going to Virginia next week, and so, I mean, if I were to, God forbid, get in something there, I'm just going to have to deal with, thankfully, you know, who I have through FLP, but here in my home state, should I go, hey, who are the network-connected attorneys here, and should I sit down with them ahead of time and see who's the best fit?
Well, here's a situation, you know, if something happens at 2 in the morning, I can't promise you that Cindy's gonna come because Cindy might be on vacation with her husband somewhere.
Sure.
It might be a conflict for Cindy to take this particular case because maybe she's got another trial going on at the same time. That's why we have 2 or 3 in the area.
Right.
Now, we'll try and accommodate that to get you Cindy if Cindy's available. But of course, you know, that's why we have 2 or 3 specified attorneys in
Yeah.
a specific area.
But it would seem to me though that if possible, I mean, I get it, you don't want to have interviews with 7,000 people. You're like, I don't have time to do that for everybody in the universe. But if possible, to say, hey, can we talk just even for 15 minutes or so I can ask you a few questions, even maybe over email, can I kind of ask some of those things so that you know in advance, because you don't want to be sitting there and going, okay, responding officer, I need to speak to my attorney. Let me flip through the phone book here and figure out who that's going to be. That you'd rather have that stuff in advance. That to me is peace of mind, but also then we know in that moment where we're going.
Right.
And so I'm going to flip this on its head for just a second. And Cindy, I'll ask you, what are you looking for in a client?
You know, I don't necessarily know I've ever been asked this question before,
Yes! Interviewing win.
but the first thing is this client somebody who is willing to listen and hear my advice, even if we don't agree? Are you willing to listen? And I think that's the same for the client. What they need to look in an attorney is the attorney willing to listen.
Right.
And that really comes with the relationship that the client needs to build with the attorney. So that's one of the first things that I look at. If this is something where I see right away we're not gelling, we're not able to communicate, that's a red flag for me. But for the most part, I'm not sure that I look for specific things in my clients other than are we going to be able to communicate?
So
There's one more though.
Go ahead, Terry, what do you do?
And Cindy probably doesn't want to say it, but can you afford to pay what I'm asking you to pay?
Yeah, and I think, wouldn't it be a great world if we didn't have to think about money, right? But the reality is we do. And you go, look, there's a reason you spend all that time, and it's not cheap to run a practice. And you're worth your money. So, okay, there's your plug. I really do think having some kind of legal protection available is important, because this kind of stuff can cost 5, 6 digits. 5 digits is nothing.
Yeah, but you got to remember something. You know, this is for you or your viewers. This is your life,
Right.
And you're probably saying, "Oh my God, you'd really worry about money?" Well, yes, because that's what we do. You know, at the end of the day, we have mouths to feed, we have, mortgages to pay, the whole 9 yards.
Sure.
And if I'm tied up with you and all you can afford is $1,000, you're going to get a $1,000 lawyer.
Right. Well, and you think, even when it's time to start answering the phone, that takes hours, and hours cost money, and they add up in a hurry. So this is why I do recommend it. I have it myself, and I recommend it for others. Well, guys, thank you for the discussion. I think that's helpful stuff. I don't think it's things that we think about all that often, but I think it's things that we should think about. So, Cindy, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And Terry, thanks as always.
Thank you.